You know what almost killed my YouTube channel before it even started? Perfectionism. I was so stressed trying to get everything right. The camera setup, the lighting, the microphone, shotgun microphone, the editing, the color grading. I barely even saw my kids during that initial time when I was trying to get things up and running. And my wife was kind of just handling everything by herself while I was in the other room just kind of obsessing over B-roll and the editing. Here's the thing, when I finally simplified everything, shot my videos on my phone with just a basic script, those videos performed just as well as the ones where I spent a lot of time and energy on. Today, I want to talk about something that changed everything for me, not just with YouTube, but with my health, my deen, and honestly, my whole life. It's called the 1% improvement principle, and I'm going to show you exactly how to use it so you don't burn out like I did. So let me paint you a picture of where I was. So I'm trying to launch this YouTube channel, right? I'm watching all these videos about how you need to get the right setup. You need to get the SLR camera. You can't just use your phone. That's just amateur. You might as well go full in. You need to have lights. You need to have a lavalier mic or a shotgun mic. You need to know about Adobe Premiere Pro. Now, I was making lists. I was trying to create all these complicated spreadsheets. I'm buying lots of equipment. I'm watching hours and hours of editing videos. And meanwhile, my wife is just kind of handling everything with the family while I'm trying to get things up and running. And obviously she wasn't too happy about the situation, and she was kind of giving me that look like, really? Is this what you're going to do? So what I kept telling myself was just a few more weeks. Once I get this system down, it'll be smooth sailing. Spoiler alert, it wasn't smooth sailing and I was drowning. I managed to get my first videos out, and yeah, they kind of looked decent, but I was completely burnt out. I didn't know how I was going to continue doing this. And this was supposed to be something that I enjoyed, something meaningful. Instead, it felt like I was working a second full-time job that paid me in stress and guilt. Most people, when they're starting something new, whether it's YouTube, a business, getting fit, improving their deen, they make the same mistake I did. They're trying to do too much too quickly. They want the end result without the process. And what happens? You get fear, you get overwhelmed, anxiety, burnout, and then they quit. I see this all the time. Someone decides they want to pray tahajjud, for example. That's an amazing goal, mashallah. But they go from zero to trying to wake up at 3 o'clock every single night. And then when they miss a single night, the guilt kicks in and suddenly they've stopped altogether. And now they're kind of just struggling with their 5 daily prayers. So here's what I did. I stopped, I looked at what was actually kind of proper just destroying me and burning me out, and I made it stupidly simple. I grabbed my phone, I wrote a basic script and nothing fancy. I recorded the video in one take. I did no editing at all, just recorded it sort of live, and you know what? I just published it. And that video, it performed just as well as the ones that I agonized hours and weeks over. That's when it clicked. The secret wasn't doing more. It was doing it less, but more consistently, and then gradually, and I'm talking about very slowly, over months and months and months, adding small improvements. Now I have a clear process. I work with an editor and my channel is growing, and I actually can see my family and help out around the house. This is where the 1% principle comes in. Instead of trying to make massive, revolutionary changes that sound impressive but burn you out, you make tiny improvements, changes so small they feel almost embarrassing. Let me give you my favourite example of this 1% principle in play, and this is the British Olympic cycling team. Now, I live in London and I remember the 2012 Olympic Games, and honestly, I wasn't sure how good Britain was going to do in the Olympics. There's a lot of talk about this cycling team, and I thought, are they going to have any chance at all? Isn't cycling more of a continental Europe thing? But this team did something amazing. They broke everything down, all the processes, and I mean everything, about Olympic cycling, and looked to improve every element by just 1%. They call this the aggregation of marginal gains. And this is also talked about in the James Clear book, Atomic Habits. And we're talking about improvements to things that you would have never thought mattered. The water bottles that athletes use, the pillows they slept with, the seats they used, the clothing, shaving little bits here and everywhere. The result, they absolutely dominated, gold after gold. It was like a winning streak that was just like amazing. And they were like the standout sort of performance for Team GB in the Olympics. Now you might be thinking, okay, Iqbal, that's good for the Olympic athletes, but I'm just trying to get my life together. I get it. But here's the thing, this works for everything. Toyota does this with something they call Kaizen, which kind of means continuous improvement. They're not looking for revolutionary changes on the factory floor. They're looking at how tools are arranged. Can they move a couple of tools closer together? Can they bring people a bit closer together? Can they bring some of the stock closer together? They are constantly making small tweaks all the time. And the result? They became like the best manufacturer in the world, not just the best car manufacturer, but the best manufacturer in the world. And you can do this with anything. Let me give you some examples from my own life. Health. I knew I needed to clean up my diet, but I wasn't about to go full keto overnight and start meal prepping and become some sort of like fitness influencer. Instead, I started by cutting out fizzy drinks, just that. I'd still drink my chai, with full sugar, full fat milk, the works, just no sort of fizzy drinks. Once I got used to that, I slowly started reducing the sugar in my chai. And this was over like months and months and months. And, not all at once, just a little bit each week. Now I just drink it with zero sugar. And some of the other Muslim brothers that I sort of hang out with, they were like, whoa, how are you having a chai without sugar? Like, what's wrong with you? But honestly, I can only taste the tea now, and like it's just nice having that hot drink. And I think the main thing is just being able to kind of socialize with others. But here's the thing about making changes this small: your brain doesn't freak out. There's no fear, no anxiety, no feeling like you're depriving yourself because you're starting so small. For example, you want to read the Quran for 30 minutes a day. Beautiful Quran, mashallah. But if you're not used to that, that's going to trigger resistance. Your brain's going to find every excuse for you to not to do that. It's going to say, I'm tired, I'll do it later, I don't have time right now. Instead, start with 1 minute, just one verse, that's it. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, right? That's the point. It's so embarrassingly small that your brain can't come up with a good excuse to not do it. I don't have time to read one verse. Just sounds absolutely ridiculous, even if you say it out loud to yourself. And once you've done it for like a week, 2 weeks, a month, and you've built that habit, the fear kind of like goes just from doing that one small little tiny habit. Then you can gradually increase it, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, no rush. Look, here's the hard truth. The reason we fail at building habits isn't because we're lazy. It's because of the fear and anxiety that we have. We avoid certain tasks because they trigger discomfort. And when we force ourselves to do them anyway, we create this negative association. Then we quit. And then we feel guilty about quitting, which makes us avoid it even more. It's just like this vicious cycle. I burnt out from YouTube and stopped for months. If I had just continued, just publish simple videos consistently, instead of chasing perfection, I'd be in a much further position right now. And one of the contrarian things is that we need to slow down to speed up. It sounds like one of those contradictory motivational quotes, but it's true. I used to do these brutal circuit training classes at the gym. You know the kind, someone yelling at you to do burpees until you see the stars. And I'd be so sore the next day that I couldn't walk properly. Forget going to the gym the following day. I could barely climb the stairs. So I skipped the gym for a few days. And before you know it, it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. But when I switched to a simpler routine that didn't absolutely wreck me, I started showing up consistently and I made way more progress. Same with flossing. I know, random example, but stay with me. Most people struggle to floss consistently. And the advice is really just start with 1 tooth, just one. It sounds absolutely insane, but that's the point. It removes the barrier. When you feel comfortable with that, you bump into 2 teeth, then 3. There's no rush. The goal is to build this up sustainably and not speed and stop you giving up. I learned this the hard way at the gym recently. I was progressing really well on the back weight machine, like the machine where you kind of sort of pull down like this. I felt great. I got a little overconfident, added too much weight too quickly, and I hurt my shoulder. So, I had to take like quite a lot of time off after that. But patience beats ego every single time. Trust me on this one. We want to be sustainable. Now here's where it gets really good. When you stick with small improvements long enough, they compound and it starts to feel amazing. I'm learning French and Arabic on Duolingo. One of my favorite features is the streak counter. I'm currently on 650 days. That's almost 2 years of showing up with Duolingo. And you know what? Seeing that number makes me want to protect it. I don't want to break the streak. Each lesson is tiny. We're talking about like 3 to 5 minutes. And that's exactly why it's sustainable. If I tried to study for 1 hour a day, I probably would have quit in like week 2. But 5 minutes, I can always find 5 minutes, even if it's while I wait for my wife to finish getting ready, which by the way, apparently is a skill that defines all known laws of physics and time. Mashallah, may Allah give me patience. And if you want to read the Quran, start with 1 verse a day. It feels like nothing, but do it every day and you build a habit. And when you're comfortable, increase it gradually. Here's a pro tip. Track your progress with a habit tracker. I do this for exercise, for content creation work. Seeing those consecutive days adds up to serious motivation. It's like getting that dopamine hit from green check marks, except this time it's actually productive instead of you just listening to messages on WhatsApp. Look, the 1% approach isn't just about productivity. It's about building a life that actually lasts. We live in a world that glorifies the hustle, the grind, the massive overnight success. But that's not real life. Real life is small, consistent changes that compound over time. Everything starts from the small things. I almost gave up on YouTube because I was trying to do too much. My health was suffering because I was trying to change everything at once. My family life was suffering. My deen life was making enough progress. But now I make tiny improvements. I track them, I celebrate them, and slowly over months and years, these improvements become massive changes. So here's what I want you to do. Pick one thing, just one, something you'll be wanting to improve but keep putting off because it feels overwhelming, and make it embarrassingly small, so small you can't possibly fail. Want to exercise? Do 1 push-up a day. Want to improve your Arabic? Just learn 1 word a day. Want to be more productive? Work for 5 minutes without distraction. That's it. Start there. Protect the streak, and when you're comfortable, increase it by 1%. If you found this helpful, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let me know in the comments, what's your embarrassingly small 1% improvement going to be? I read every comment, yes, even the ones that start with, I have this great crypto opportunity, but yeah, I have to kind of ignore those opportunities. But yeah, please hit the subscribe button if you want to know more content from me about this stuff. And also, please consider joining up to my email newsletter, The Muslim Solopreneur.